I'm audible? I'm audible? Okay. Yeah. So in the last class we have discussed about development in general, and we have discussed about the modernist perspective of development, that is modernist paradigm of development, where we try to find out some of the pros and cons of that approach. Along with that, there are also other theoretical framework which will help to justify that modernist paradigm of development which we discussed yesterday. Right, and basically we focused on the individual and psychological attribute of modernist paradigm of development. Okay, so you need to understand now about development, the concept development. What is development? How do you define development is very important. Okay, and about which I have already took a class yesterday, and I can also reiterate whatever is being discussed yesterday very briefly. Okay, so first about the definition, we can simply say that development is a, growth to a higher stage or a stage which is matured enough. Okay, so here we have discussed about different stages, right from the very basic need and basic facility related stages, then social economic stages, social political stages, and at last we have that cultural development stages. In the very basic need and basic facilities related stages, we try to meet the very basic indicator of development, like the infrastructural related facilities which we require. That is a requirement for internet, access to transport, access to road infrastructure, access to electricity, access to internet. So these are the very basic facility related development. Apart from that, access to health, access to education will also come under basic facility related development. Okay, and we also need to emphasize on gender development. This is also a premise of basic facility as well as the basic socio-economic development. In socio-economic development, we try to focus on the mass consciousness that their economic needs is supposed to be met, and that will prove it through finances to income. So there is also a gap between male and female regarding the wages. Okay, and it is important to make women also to be conscious about that gap. Okay, and hence that gap between education and literacy between man and woman will also come to play a role here. So here, when you understand the development from you see the socio-economic perspective, it is all about income generating sources, creating more and more income generating sources, and also creating institutions which can give them subsidies to the poor, give those who are needed some subsidies to develop. Then we move on to other stage, the next stage, very next stage, that is socio-political, where we actually think about the equity and inequality. Equity is in power, which actually mass wants. Equity in power, which is usually not possible because society is not equal, right? The units of the society, the component of the societies are not equal. So society is also hierarchized, and hence we here need to think about how to bring equitas. Okay, and for that we also have certain policies. We can think about some approach-based development where and policy-based intervention where we actually see the role of government as well as mass media to create awareness, to create that conscientiousness among the people as well as trying to bridge the gap between development and underdevelopment. And at the most advanced stage, we have that cultural development where we actually think about realizing the creativity of the people. Even if people have that creativity, unless and until you do not have that basic need satisfied, you cannot fully participate into the community. At one go, you can think that I'm participating in the community, but you are being sponsored by your parents. So at your home, you have to participate in the community. You have to show your creativity, and for that, you need to develop yourself. And that is the highest level of development. That is called the cultural development here. So we discuss about those many stages. When we talk about the development, we actually see that it is about our internal attribute, what is going inside us, apart from the external forces. We also discuss about from external forces. When you see our surrounding institution, the institution which can have an impact on us through various policies to make us develop, to think differently, to also make certain welfare available for us. Okay, by distributing the benefit equitably. Right. So that is what institution can do. Here we can also think about maintaining structures, maintaining institutions. See, in underdeveloped countries, we can actually see that third world countries are basically underdeveloped. And when you actually try to understand development, you also need to understand underdevelopment, because there is a dichotomy between the development and underdevelopment. So, unless and until you understand the underdevelopment, which is being characterized by various social problems, right? Social problems are there in developed countries, but the way it is addressed is different than the way it is addressed in underdeveloped countries. And also the level of acuteness of those problems in developed countries will be different than in underdeveloped countries. In underdeveloped countries, the level of acuteness of the social problem, which we actually know, the illiteracy, ill health, nutrition issues, water facilities, basic water facilities, family breakdown, value changes. You talk about problem and cons of urbanizations and all are more prominent and apparent compared to developed countries, right? And it is more acute, and hence we can say that we are underdeveloped because we did not have that institutional capacity. Right. So we think about developing the institutional capacity in underdeveloped or third world countries here. Right. And here the modernist approach and modernist paradigm of development, what is being emphasized upon is the institution, but the model of institution is to be transported, is to be imported from the West. Okay, that's what we have understood. So we are supposed to have technology transfer, knowledge transfer, information transfer, everything from the West, and it is to be replicated in the third world countries. What is there in the West? So this is basically a westernized concept. So exposed to mass media will help us to erase our traditional lifestyle and adopt a new lifestyle. That is what the idea of modernist perspective. So exposed to mass media will make us modern. So when you talk about modern, so modern has also certain attribute according to Alex Angeles. What we discussed yesterday, he said that okay, you are supposed to be modern, but without having those individual attributes, you are not supposed to be modern. Even if you have the exposure of mass media and diffusion of those westernized ideas which you have inoculated, you have adopted, and you try to cherish. Okay, and those very measurement of modernity are important, which we have discussed yesterday. And those measurement of modernity are like openness to any innovation and change is the very first measurement of modernity. We're open to innovation, open to change. Second is the democratic orientation is very important. And you see that West is actually trying to make third world countries behave like West. Okay, without even thinking about our local culture, our embedded value systems, right? And our needs and priorities. So here, when we talk about development, development is imposed. Development is not coming from the bottom. It is not coming from the people of the third world countries. What people think that they need regarding development. So it is about development, what West has designed for us and also defined for us. And we are supposed to follow that model of development. Right. So democratic orientation is also very important according to Anklets to be modern. This is also important, no doubt. It is important. Even in many third world countries, you see those countries who are democratic and have a democracy as a political system are more stable, and for a over a period of time, you can see that there is a transition from you see underdeveloped to less developing countries. Then LDC. So you actually see that apart from that, there are also other measurements. Like we have seen the empathy is very important measurement. Empathy will create a mobility, which is important, and mobility toward change, mobility to come out of that comfort zone is very, very important, right? Yeah, and then we also have it's almost 11. So these are also some of the parameters we see that measurement of the modernity, mobility to change, right? Mobility, empathy, democratic orientations, and efficacy. Efficacy and efficiently you finish a work with the help of technology. So scientific temperament and your aptitude towards science and technology is also another measurement of modernity. Right. So like this way, you have some parameters. You describe 9 parameters. If you know 4 or 5 parameters, that will also go. At least you need to find some parameters in a modern person. What Alex Ankelis described. Okay, openness, that flexibility. Then you see the mobility, empathy, democratic orientations, the scientific temperament, right? So like that way, you can actually measure a person to be modern. And also we have discussed about the withdrawal of status respect. This is related to traditional value system which is very ingrained in most of the developing countries. It is not there in developed societies. Developed societies, there are only have and have nots, rich and poorer class. Okay, but in developing countries, we also have a middle class. Right, we have class based on ethnicity, based on gender, right? We have different types of class. Here, when you say class, class is based on the social stratification and which is also again based on the occupation. Right, but you see, it is in developing countries, understanding class is very complicated. So it is not a very straightforward linear approach to understand the class, and hence whatever that Everett Hajan has said, Hajan has also come up with the withdrawal of status respect can be implemented and can be envisaged to an extent. Okay, because he is a psychologist, he actually looked the attribute of a class from that point of view. So once they continue attaining that status, it will also give them a tendency to hegemonize and exploit the other class. I'm talking about class. You forget about the caste sect. So it is important also to remove that status of that particular class so that they can feel insecure and you can distribute the benefit. This is associated with another philosophy we call social action, which you will be getting in community development, that participatory dimension of development. So we are still restricting ourselves to understand development only. We are not here uh, that come across the participatory line of development. So it is all about development, help you to understand the dynamics of development. Okay. Then there are also some benefits, merits and demerits of this modernization approach. First, we actually see that definitely it focuses on diffusion of innovation, okay, and diffusion of certain ideas which we can adopt and we can develop. And we also see Green Revolution at the same time. It has created development in a few regions, but it hasn't created development across the region in India, across all the regions. It is because of the local context, because of the system and technique of farming, which is different, because of the land quality, which is different across the region. Right. So high yielding variety seeds and fertilizers, chemical fertilizers can prove to be beneficial for Punjab, a region like Punjab, may not be beneficial for a region like Assam. Okay, and hence we can see the policy related to development and consequences and effects of the policies related to development is also uneven. Green Revolution is a part of that modernist paradigm, the policy. If we see in Indian context, okay, the effect of adoption of high yielding variety seeds, and you see the consequences. So the development has been ultimate end result. We need that flourishment, development, and you see that when you say evolution, in that case, we actually see the productivity is more. If we find that, okay, we have attained the expected level of productivity, that means that it has already developed. It has met the development parameters. But at the same time, it is that development is not similar across all the regions because of that local context. And modernization paradigm has ignored that local context. It has ignored the local context, as we have discussed yesterday. It did not study the local culture, local niceties. Okay. And hence we have another model that is called alternative paradigm of development, which is dependency model of development. In dependency model of development, you actually find the world system is divided into core and periphery. This is also can be conceptualized in terms of the Wallerstein world system and structural imperialism. Okay, I will be writing down this. So one is dependency model of development, which is an alternative paradigm of development compared to modernist paradigm of development. Because here we don't think about this pro-innovation, don't focus on the pro-mass media and pro-literacy, pro-persuasion, which are the characteristics of modernist dimension of development. In modernist dimension of development, you say that how to make a nation, a country modern. This is through exposure of mass media. So pro-persuasion is a very important role, and that mass media is supposed to persuade to the agenda of development. But agenda of development is to be carried out by developed countries. They will not take the inputs from the developing countries. Okay, so this is the kind of imposition they will make and hegemonize their culture, their idea of development on the people of the developing countries. Okay, it is a modernist dimension of development, right? And hence we say that there is a pro-persuasion. You persuade them with your agenda, with your awareness, like drive. You persuade. Media has a role to persuade about government agenda. Okay, so modernist dimension of development and modernist paradigm of development has a role to even diffuse the idea of the government. Okay, but here you see, here we are only focusing on government idea of development. We are not focusing on the people-centric idea of development. At one level, we can study the question and problem and tension between the developed and developing countries. And at one level and other level, we can also study the tension between the government-imposed development and also people-centered development in the same paradigm, modernist paradigm of development. Understood? Huh? Any problem? No? Okay. So when we talk about pro-persuasion, media is supposed to persuade about government schemes, policies, make people aware, and government line of development. which can be addressed in social planning. That model of development is being enumerated by a different development planner called John Rotman. Okay, for the time being, we will keeping John Rotman aside. Okay, we will focus on dependency model of development because in understanding this theoretical framework, you are not supposed to limit yourself only in developed and developing countries. So now you have to narrow down those model of development, how to be applicable in community context. Okay, so that modernist model of development can be executed in community context when you uh, analyze and integrate a theoretical framework like diffusion of innovation in your research topic. Any research topic, you can people have adopted any innovation. Suppose mobile phone related innovation. This is basically a modernist perspective. Although we try to bring the point of view of those users, we are not able to give them that space in the development paradigm because this is something which is also being imposed. So when they have adopted a technology, be it internet, mobile phone, latest technology, this is related to modernist perspective of development, how innovation is being diffused. Okay, because we don't take the point of view and perspective of the laggard section. Okay, adopter will definitely adopt that innovation, and many a time, even if they know, they can persuade the laggard section. But even if they know the cons and the constraint, they cannot effectively communicate the cons and constraint to the laggard section. And laggard section has their own set of challenges which they could not communicate. Okay, so actually see that there is a gap in development. You cannot think about all-round holistic development when you think about the modernist paradigm of development. Okay, and hence we have that alternative paradigm of development where we are actually critiquing that modernist paradigm of development by saying that modernist paradigm of development actually created a dependency among the developing countries by imposing the model through even capitalist expansion and making the developing countries, more and more underdeveloped. So, the dependency theories like you have Quijano is one. We talked about Andre Gunnar Frank. Andre G. Frank, so we know Amin is one. Amin, then we talk about Andre G. Frank. They are basically dependency theorists. We also have Quijano is one, then Previs is one. They talk about this dependency syndrome of those underdeveloped and developing countries. Why there is no development? There is no development because of the dependent because developing countries are dependent on the developed countries because of the following of that modernist model. Because they are already colonized, although they are now decolonized. They are decolonized because decolonization processes started during 1960s. It is finished. So all the colonies have already abandoned their subjugation. Right, and now the countries are decolonized. But again, there are also newly colonized by neoliberalism, by this capitalist expansion, according to dependency theorists. Okay, and hence you see that what Rastro, that is a Rastro, these are some of the theories you also need to know. And especially those who want to see yourself in academics, this is more important. And anyhow you want to, you should know about those traditions. Rastro talked about the linear model of development. Linear model, that is the progress is always linear. so and so. Okay, so we actually see. Okay, so you actually see that here they actually talk about the alternative paradigm of development, and Rashtra talks about the linear progression of development. And linear progression is that, according to Rashtra, that underdeveloped countries will also achieve the stage of development, the kind of stages that we are talking of now. Once by making the availability of basic facilities, then also socio-economic, then having that mass consciousness to mass media, then also through policy intervention, they could emphasize and gain that equitous relationship which is being established, and then at one level they can also cherish their creativity. So stage wise they could also be developed, and this is a linear progression if they follow the modernist paradigm. But dependency model has said that no, they will always be underdeveloped because development is imposed, that I have already told you, and they have created a satellite in the sense that he actually spoke of that core and periphery continent. The whole world system is divided into core and periphery regions. Core regions are at the center, who are developed regions, and periphery regions are at the edge. Okay, they are less developed region. And if you look at the communication linkages between core and periphery, you can see that linkage is vertical and linkage is also feudal. So that linkage is not horizontal. So there is an information flow and communication flow between core and periphery. But that information flow and communication flow between core and periphery is vertical. And basically the information flow from core to periphery is vertical, that is also downward in the sense top to bottom, and benefit from periphery to core, that is from you see upward. Okay, so what they do actually, so this core and periphery continuum has created some metropolis and satellite, and underdeveloped region will always be the satellite of the metropolitan countries. They will remain periphery, they can never be the core. Okay, because of the information flow, because of the cultural flow, because of the you can see the currency flow, the policy through which we can actually see economic activities, political activities, which made the periphery and the satellite always remain as a satellite. Okay, and that's what you see that dependency theory said, and whatever they have provided is also equivalent to structural imperialism and world system theory. So world system theory is propounded by Wallerstein, and structural imperialism is being propounded by Galtung. So Galtung understanding of structural imperialism is very, very important, where we get to find the communication and information flow from top to bottom, core to periphery, from core to periphery, and which is characterized by imbalances, because it is all about how they perceive us. Okay, and you see these journalists from the advanced countries, initially, we actually see now we are focusing on decolonizing approaches, and that too in recent years. Okay, but all our books, our textbook, our citations, our researches are being imported and came from West. So if we cite someone, he is also from West. If you get the references, then also from a Western scholar, right? So we can't cite someone from our own region, from South, from global South, right? Because we don't have that much of text, that much of literature developed. That is also one. Okay, and it is all because of the dependency syndrome. It is the adverse consequences of modernism. Okay, and it has created a dependency that we rely on. Even if we produce something, it is not getting acknowledged, because they will also refer the elite of the developing countries will create an identity of interest with the elite of the developed countries. according to dependency theories. Okay, so elite of the developing, that means the peripheral nations, periphery, will also develop an identity of interest with the elite of the poor, and that's why there is a dependency. Okay, so it is being discussed thoroughly in most of the book. You can focus on the syllabus Malkote's book. All of you can read that book because we have been following Malkote sir's book only when we try to understand development communication. And also, you can go for Dipankar Sinha's book. This is also a very good book on development communication or communication for social change, where you can actually understand those concepts. You can get detail about that concept. You can it can help you to conceptualize about those models and theories. Okay. So you understood this to modern, right? Dependency is understood. Basically, it is because of the modernist perspective. So we are getting ourselves dependent on the West. We certain underdeveloped countries or developing countries are dependent because of the modernist perspective, because of the transportation of model technologies, takes, ideas, knowledge, which make us dependent on the West, and we are highly westernized, but we tend to forget the indigenous, which is native. So that indigeneity component is not there in us, but we are getting ourselves much more westernized because we think that that is what is modern without even reflecting upon the individual psychological attribute, okay, which is also important. Now you see, many a time because of the niceties that we come across, that niceties, nitty-gritties, those parochiality in the culture also dissuade some of the people who have adopted that modernist paradigm. Okay, and they could not even gel with those who could not follow the modernist paradigm. So that kind of you see that differences and differences in terms of identity of interest we can see. So we actually see that it's a vast country. India is a vast country. I mean, we have been grappled with lot of problems. Huh. And we are also caste laden, and society is ingrained with so many problems, no? And we have different perspective, which is being built. And Hollywood has also pervaded our life at times. Advertising has pervaded our life. If we talk about the cultural imperialism, this is also a kind of dependency syndrome. Right, we talk about cultural imperialism. Now we are talking about cultural hybridization. English. We are talking about Suzito and all. Like the food culture is being hybridized. Pop culture, Korean pop culture. These are also hybridized culture. This is also a reflection of modernization as well as, to a certain extent, you can say the dependency. So both theories have actually helped you to understand this syndrome, and that too across the nation. And hence, these very paradigm, the dependency, wall system theory, and modernist paradigm of development, are also studied when you try to conceptualize international communication and also try to understand the relation between the nations. Okay, so these are very important paradigm of development. Now we are moving to community. Yeah. Sorry? Structural imperialism. Okay. Wallerstein. Wallerstein. R. Okay?
And we give the one system.
That is, we actually talked about one system, sorry, wall system theory. And Galton. Galton. Galton is structural imperialism. But the same, concept is the same. So it is all about structural imperialism when we talk about the communication communication and information flow between the developed and developing countries, core and periphery, which is characterized. Wallerstein talk about the world system theory, that the whole world is divided between the core and periphery. Same, but the thing is that the conception are the same. The what they conceive are same, but name is different. Wallerstein said that wall system theory. It also said the core periphery division, which is there, and that lead to structural imperialism. And Galton has already said that structural imperialism is there because of the vertical communication flow and also feudal communication flow. Feudal communication flow said that communication is there between the periphery to core, but there is no communication between periphery, among periphery. Okay, although we have SAARC and all, so we are trying to, even SAARC countries, Asia Pacific, these are some regional forum. We try to understand the problem of the peripheral nations. Okay, in terms of world system theory. And that is also structural imperialism because we are part of global south here, developing countries. And G20, this is also a kind of understanding and the problem of the developing countries, the peripheral state. Okay, but initially you see that there is no communication between the peripheral countries. There were only communication between peripheral to core, and peripheral will communicate to core about the problem. So this is our problem. We need fund and assistance. You help us with fund and assistance. And again, they put themselves into this modernist model. Once they ask the fund assistance for development, so they are also being a part of the structural adjustment policy, right? Because that's what developed countries want. That financial institution, IMF and all, want developed countries to take the loan. And many times developed countries find it difficult to repay. They also provide debt relief. But at the same time, they have imposed some kind of conditions. And which is very hard on us. Those conditions are hard. Because of the very local niceties, we are not developed. We do not have that structure to deal with the problems the way they are dealing with the problems. So the kind of the funds and assistance we got, not necessarily that will meet our problem. Without making people involved. Now that thing come. Okay, this is a different paradigm now. People-centered paradigm. Okay, so we had that understanding of development from the modernist paradigm, dependency theory, you understood? Dependency theory and world system theory or structural imperialism. You can only understand the niceties of development. You can't understand about participation. But now we are focusing on participation because we are developing countries. We want some people-centered development. Okay, to make ourselves freed from the structural adjustment conditions. Okay, and we see when you talk about people-centered development now, we are talking about the community development. So here we are actually studying some community, the problem of the community. Here we are talking about how to mobilize a community. What is community development? What is community organization? Now community development and community organization are two different things here. Okay, so community can also be developed without intervention of any organization here. Okay, and that is also kind of modernist paradigm at narrower level or at local level. So community can be developed without the intervention of community organization, and that too for a sustainable period of time and without involvement of the people, admittedly. That is again a modernist paradigm in local context. So in that case, what will happen? The expert, the technical assistant team will study the problem of the community. Okay, they will develop a linkage and network with the agencies. Okay, from where they will get the services, and also they will create a network of service providers. And the whole process is highly bureaucratic, so they will not make people involved. And this whole process is called social planning as a part of you see the community development. Now in community development, you see that development is a process, whereas you see in community organization, we see development is a process but it is not time bound. But in community development, development is a process which is time bound. So within a specific period of time, whatever problem related to development, the social ill are supposed to be met and addressed. So it is time bound. But in terms of social community organization, there is no specific time that you need to meet the development. Rather, people are supposed to understand their needs, their priorities, and they participate and they understand how to own the resources and take part in development. That what is the role of community organization. Okay, so this concept originated in 1860s in USA. So we will not be discussing about the history of the concept, political, community development and organization. Simply, I want to give you some understanding about the differences between the two concepts, community organization and community development, and some of the model of development which can be implemented at community level. And those models can be development centric and can be participatory or people centric. Okay, so one is social planning model, that is development centric. Here there is no role of the people, because here a community expert or an NGO or existing communication will study the problem of the community. Okay, see that there is a housing issue, people are not getting sufficient shelter which is required. Okay, so that there is an infrastructural issue which is reigned in one particular village. There is also educational problem, because you see the ratio of male and female education is, you can see that 70-30. So female are illiterate in that region. Now you need to have a plan for the female to be literate, but it is studied by the communication expert. Okay, this is outside the people's needs and necessities. They are not interviewing people and interviewing the key informant. They haven't carried out any focused group discussion with the communities. They carried out a survey based on some structured parameters. Okay, structured parameters, not semi-structured parameters. Yes and no format. Okay, they said yes and no. Okay, on that basis, we have identified that these are your problems. Now let me handle this problem, address this problem. And how will I address this problem? We will provide you the service. But actually, if they do not know whether that service is required or not, this is a part of the social planning. They plan out. They plan out. They said that we are the providers. We are the sponsors. Providers, we are sponsors. You enjoy. You are the consumers. You enjoy the service. And that's how they create beneficiaries. We have also different schemes to create beneficiaries. So these citizens become a beneficiaries in that case. But actually they don't participate to understand the need and necessities. And they don't identify their need and necessities. And many a time you go to a household, you ask them what is your problem. They won't be able to tell you what is their problem. Okay, it's not like they're not literate. Many times they're literate. There are also like people who studied up to 7th standard, 8th standard, even past matriculation. But still they will not be able to identify their need. So identification of need is very important in people-centric development. When we say community development, okay, which is now the agenda of developing countries. Okay, so we have actually come from development to participation here. So that is the transition. Okay, so we are not simply talking about development. So in social planning model, which we are talking of, only focusing of that planning, social planning model is only focusing on development. Okay, so because we have carried out a survey, we have prepared a report. Now I am going to submit that report to an agency from where we will also make the schemes available and service will be provided to you. School will be constructed. Okay, so maybe teachers may be recruited, may not be recruited, but you will get schools. Some structure you will get. Okay. and or maybe okay, you will get some that structure in terms of housing facilities, but they are not supposed to continue understanding, or even they will not supposed to uh, find out the long-term implication of their sponsorship. What will happen after 2 3 years? People have actually got it or not? So a structure has already been implemented. Whether the school is used or not, teachers are being recruited or not, students are coming or not. So that is basically that comes from participation, when people will participate in the development process. If people will not participate, then you see that we actually do things at social planning level. Sometimes also it is very difficult to make people involved. And hence there is a course like communication for social change. You need to know how to make people involved. It's very difficult to make people involved because of that inertness, general inertness, and also an apathy. Why will they be bothered about the kind of schemes? They will come up with hundreds of problems. If you ask them first, they will come up with hundreds of problems, but they don't able to identify their needs. They'll say this very problem, it is there, we could not get the healthcare access. Even if there is a scheme, we don't know about the schemes and all. But what is their exact need is not being identified. Okay, hence there are also other two models. We have democratic, that is called locality development model. So we focus on development of institution at the local level, self-help group at the local level, and there is also another form of development that is called the social action. Social action is a bit different because it is movement oriented and conflict oriented. So where there is inequitous power in the society, in the sense that resources are not equally distributed. You see, there are 2 3 villages. Resources are not equitably distributed. They could not get access to the resources, and the nearby villages have got all the facilities. So obviously, there will be a tendency to conflict with the institutions, because we are not getting into whether our neighborhood or neighboring village has got all the facilities. Okay, so when resources are not equitably distributed, so you actually have a conflicting tendency. So many times the tendency is there in separation. But as a community worker, as an NGO activist, or as a practitioner now, you are a development practitioner or practitioner for communication change, you need to uh, understand the problem and try to mobilize them. Here, your role will be effectively mobilizing and organizing the people, and to develop a consensus. If there is no consensus, okay, you come up with that conflicting mentality. That is a part of social action, which we can discuss later. Okay, and in the very first model, you also have that called democratic participation of the people. That is called locality development, where you actually see that we try to understand the community. Try to understand. How will you try to understand the community? You say, I'll put you in a community. Okay. So after 2 basic classes in communication for social change, if I tell you, oh, go to a community, you try and mobilize a group, and then we will also ensure some of these services to be available for the community. You tell me, how will you intervene into the community? First, one thing you can see, how will you intervene? If I put you in a community, what will you try to know from that community? Ronit?
That fooding habits,
Fooding habits and
clothes, clothing and like everybody has different clothing habits.
only that.
Some of them, language,
Okay, yeah. Then, so you are emphasizing on culture. That is also one aspect. Okay, so you will look for the cultural aspect, right? So basically, the culture of the community, what they eat, which language they speak and they communicate, right? And also the kind of clothes they wear. Okay, that is fine if you try to bring change related to culture, but cultural norms, or you try to sponsor your brand, that could be effective, right? But no, I want you a problem. You try to first you will look for a problem in that community, right? You look for problem perspective, right? What will you look for? Problem means what can be the problem in that community?
Their values and habits.
Hmm?
Their habits, their values, their what are the hierarchies in the
Right, right, yeah. Values, value structure. You are supposed to keep yourself abreast of their value structure. In most of the community, you see that leaders usually take the decision. There release that hate Guy Murhas. So, who are the leaders who are into decision making? That is the first and foremost thing you are supposed to find out. Who are the leaders who are into decision making? Because your goal is to persuade the leader first. Right. Without persuading the leader about your plan, you cannot intervene into that community. Right? And second, you'll understand the societal hierarchy. Right? Hierarchy. Hierarchy, you see the role of women in that village, whether they usually communicate with male folk or not. Because in most of the communities, women don't communicate with the male folk. They're under the veil, but not here in this case. But here also you could see that there is a binary between male and female. They don't communicate openly. Right. So you need to segregate problem differently. Male is a male problem, male-centric problem, this is a female-centric problem. Right? Then,
problems.
sorry?
Problems.
Yeah, problems. What can be the problem? Usual problems you see? Yeah? Health related problems. Yeah, but you have to be concrete now. Health related, what kind of problem? You're supposed to design a campaign. You tell me, what kind of problem?
Sanitation.
Hmm?
Sanitation.
Yeah, sanitation related problem. And then,
There can whole stereotypes about some things that we can.
And if they are like old practices, do they lead to certain health problems with their cultural practices, or if the practices that are present in the community do they lead to certain problems related to health?
find out that certain practices,
Prejudices or
practices,
certain
right.
stereotypes which exists in the society.
Right. You need to try to find out certain illegal practices or spiritual prejudices which be harmful for the community. Try
Which
to
will stop them from developing.
and stop them from the community.
Certain beliefs can help you problems. And also if they have certain beliefs or certain habits which they want to preserve. So if they are not getting a voice or they are not getting a
Yeah.
that's as important.
This is what IPS. Yesterday also we spoke about IPS. Yeah. So you see, so many issues came up, right? So we talked about the knowledge system, indigenous knowledge system. which we have been emphasizing upon. But unless and until we speak to them, we try to understand their oral traditions, how will you understand the knowledge which is inherited and passed through generation and passed over generation, right? So it is important to also understand the knowledge system of that of the community, of the village, respective village, which you are going to intervene. Okay, so it is important. And then anything else, Gauravi? You understood what I am communicating? You understood? What about you? You didn't understand? You understood. Louder. Louder. I just want you to say some of the problem community the village you try to find out problem. That's why you find that things. You tell me one thing for one problem. Ah, but it is very yeah, personal. Sorry? Transportation. Transportation. Yeah, bank issue in most of the villages. Then, yeah. So come up with some of the this is very important issue that you have to get not to be very careful. They talk about the patriarchy. Patriarchy is very much okay. But already we are not supposed to uproot the patriarchy. It's important. I'm going to tell you in community development, because when we talk about the niceties, why it is important. Even if you are gender sensitive, I'm also gender sensitive. But here, when you are talking about development, you are supposed to create a harmony across the group. Yesterday also I have told you that when you talk about the development, it's about developing the capacities, right? Facilitating the infrastructure, creating infrastructure, facilitating and maintaining the infrastructure is important. Development of capacities of the people, educating the people, persuading towards right habits, which is also important, and also creating intra-group and inter-group harmony is also important. You need to find out some of the groups which are existing in the villages. Village development corporations, you see, village cooperation, right? You see the local panchayat, you are supposed to find out who is the village head. If a lady is the village head, so definitely your job will be a bit edgier. It will be easier, right? Then we will also try to find out the group, women group, existing groups in the villages. Women group, youth-centric group are also there. And their activities so far, which will help you an idea about the status of development of that community. And you will carry out a survey through personal interview. That survey is different. Field survey, we call it field survey, but that will be carried out through interviewing. So you will be interviewing and one-to-one interview, and also interviewing the key informant to understand the status of the development of that village. Right? And you need to find out groups, identify the groups, because those groups will definitely help you to understand about the activities which are being carried out by those groups for the development of the community. Because here we are talking about community development. You are a practitioner from outside, but they should not consider you as an outsider. Right, and this is very important from locality development perspective. We have already discussed about three models of development in terms of community development, which is people-centric development. Unlike the modernist paradigm, and also an alternative paradigm, we say dependency paradigm, because dependency paradigm of development and alternative paradigm of development is all about critiquing the modernity, and it hasn't suggested any alternative as such, although we call it an alternative paradigm. Okay, hence, so alternative we have got in terms of community development. Now, in terms of community development, we also have various kind of development. One is social planning, which is not people-centric. Because here the role of community practitioners or development practitioners is not to understand the problem views of the people, simply carry out a survey and based on some secondary resources, prepare a report and get the service delivered to the people, which is a easier job, time bound, easier job, very easier. And when you talk about the, you see, locality development, here you need to build a consensus with the community. So it is very important to build that consensus. It is very important to make people democratically engage with your vision, your perception. Now, when you intervene a community, you will not intervene without having any purpose. You need to know your purpose, why you are here in a community. Definitely, purposefully you are going to intervene. No, you want to, you see, build a school, and you not only building the structure, you want also to get the village maybe youth educated. You see that there is a literacy gap in that village, or you can also say that female are not educated, and you want a school where only female. This is a female only school. Okay, only female could be educated, and you will not only construct the structure, you will also make the community democratically involved, understanding their needs in terms of education, also what they actually need, and what is their perception. What is the problem in terms of education? The extent of the problem. Problem is education. Okay, education related problem because they did not get any education. Extent, their knowledge, level of knowledge you see. Many a time they may not be educated. I have already discussed the things in folk and community classes. And many a time we also see that there are few people in our villages who may not be educated, they may not be literate, but they have mastered one you say mastered one text, world text, suppose Puranic text, epic, and also some ideology they have mastered, and they do have a better philosophy than yours. They do have a better vision than yours. Okay, hence understanding the level of knowledge of the people is also important. So we have some statistics. We should not merely go by the statistics only. Okay, so it is not like we let them illiterate. Unless and until they won't like to come up for education, you cannot impose education on them. No, you have to be educated because there is a low literacy rate, and I have got the instruction to make you educated. You might have to spend time like in 2 months, 3 months, a year. Okay, spend that time with them. You ask that time from your organization. But you will also fulfill your role as a community practitioner. That is a part of locality development. When you actually see apathy among the community members regarding any problem that we see that is getting very severe, and they are apathetic to address it, you will intervene and make them participate in their problem with their resources and own the resources and address the problem. Okay, so that is important. Okay then, I'm keeping.